when we begin to look deeper into the Enneagram and understand what the Enneagram is really all about, we begin to see that the basis on which the Enneagram is built is this idea of numbers, that there are 9 fundamental numbers. It's no coincidence that we use numbers rather than letters here, and although it's something which in many ways is intangible, numbers themselves seem to have a certain vibration, certain characteristics. We are, without realizing it, drawn to certain numbers, and maybe we don't want anything to do with other numbers. Maybe we have a lucky number that we seem to be drawn to that seems to make us feel good, or we have certain numbers that we like to have around us and certain numbers that don't seem to have anything to do with this. We're drawn to some and not to others, in the way that we are to certain people, or maybe to certain foods, or maybe music that we choose. This what is I would describe as a vibrational alignment and affinity is essentially how we begin to pick up these subtle characteristics of numbers, because they do in essence have a vibration of their own, a frequency at which they oscillate, which gives them certain characteristics that identifies them as different from all of the other 8 numbers. And these qualities are essentially the building blocks from which the personality is formed. The seed that has come into life that we mentioned earlier is essentially one of these numbers. This potentiality, this little speck of potential, infinite potential that comes in, it comes in as one of these numbers. And the numbers themselves then begin to take shape as, in human form, the personality. So when we begin to look at the energy of certain numbers, we begin to see how there's similarities between what the numbers represent and how the personality begins to develop. So, for example, you can look at the energy of 1, and the energy of 1 is almost the first step on this numerical, perhaps it's a line, and more correctly I think it's a cycle, a loop of numbers. But if we look at the number 1, even in its numeral, stands alone. It stands tall. There's an isolation, and almost a rigidity in being one of a kind, finding it difficult to receive input from outside, almost as though it finds it difficult to start relationships. It's almost a sense of this oneness, this numerical 1, believing itself to be all that there is, to be perfect. This almost one shell being held inside. If we to compare that to the 2, now you look at the number 2, now we can write the number 2 obviously as the numeral 2, but the energy of 2 is about pairs, it's about relationships, it's about duality, it's about 2 of a kind. Now compare that to the 1, for the 2 is all about relationships. There is 2-ness in its energy. There is the energy of being wanting to, this desire for connection with others, of not perhaps feeling complete within themselves when they're not in this relationship with their, shall we say, other half, the 2. Okay? Now, you can then begin to extrapolate this as you begin to understand other numbers. So, maybe we look at the number 7. Now, the energy of 7, many people are drawn to the energy of 7 because it seems to be something about the energy of 7. A lot of people have it as their lucky number that seems to represent a kickstart forwards. It feels good. It's lucky. It makes us. It's like a dynamic spearhead moving us forward. It gets us going. It doesn't seem to be anything static about the energy of 7. It makes us feel good. And in many ways, that's exactly how the personality type is, because the energy of 7 in the personality type, we're drawn to personality type 7s very often because they seem to represent the spontaneous, free, dynamic, fun-loving, effervescent energy that, we would like to be if we were free from our stuff. And we could look at all the other 8 numbers if we wish to, but I think that gives us sort of an overview of the connections between numbers themselves and the personality types.